This is Sherry Fletcher, and this is part of the Centennial Celebration for Sierra County. Today we have some very esteemed guests with us, and we have a large group, so I will turn that over and let everyone introduce themselves, starting with Pat, and perhaps Pat, the year that you graduated from high school, and your connection to our motley crew here.
It's terrible. My name is Pat Zimmerman. My father was Secretary Chamber of Commerce here from 1943 to 1948, and I came here in 1945 out of desperation because I was going to school in California, and the school was as big as the town I came from in Minnesota. So I had to know all these people then, and we have been friends ever since. I lost them for about 50 years, but I came back and I found them again.
Jane?
I'm Jane Cain, and I came to TRC in 1946. My sister was teaching home economics, and that was during the war, and she needed some help with her little children, so I was asked to come and live with her, and I had a heck of a time here. I came from Elida, New Mexico, where they didn't drink beer, and got to TRC where you can drink anything. It's fun to come and be a part of this. I live out at Engle, and I'm near the spaceport that they're trying to pull off. And maybe they will, maybe they won't. We'll see.
I'm Judy Hopkins Smith. I was born in Caballo in 1943 and raised in Caballo and live in Caballo right today. And I graduated from the TRC in 1961 and went to grade school at Caballo.
I'm Dale Hopkins. I graduated in 1951, was born in Caballo in 1933, October 33, and lived there pretty well all this time. Still there.
I'm Ed Hopkins. I was born in 1937, graduated in 1955.
I'm Dale Hopkins. I was born in Caballo in 1939. Went to grade school there with Caballo, where they just had, well, there's 8 grades when I started there, and then went to 6. I graduated from high school in Hot Springs in 1957. I've known most of these people here most of my life.
I'm Daisy Faulkner Wilson, and I've been in Sierra County most of my life. I lived my first few years down at Caballo, where the Caballo Lake is now. When the lake got close to our house, we moved to Hot Springs, and I graduated from Hot Springs High School in 1946.
I'm Jacque McKinney Johnston. I came here permanently in 1942. I graduated from high school here in 1946 and married the love of my life in 1949. We're still here.
And I think Jacque, was it your grandmother or your aunt or that was owned the Vera Hotel?
My aunt and uncle.
And so you lived with them then when you were living at the Vera Hotel. So
right.
This is something we'll discuss more, that the Vera Hotel had some great stories that we will certainly, about the Vera Hotel, that we will talk about that later. And I'm sure you guys will remember some of the stories about the life in Hot Springs when you were all growing up. Kenneth?
Hi, I'm Ken Johnston. I was born in 1937. I came to TRC in 1932.
You got here before you was born.
Try 1927.
Probably.
What's your mother doing?
Try 1927, Kevin.
Maybe I was born in 1927. Came here in 1932. How's that?
That's good. That's good.
Graduated high school here in 1946.
Anything goes in Hot Springs, right? So that we have some of the history, about everyone here and the memories. What do you remember about grade school in Caballo? And obviously, some folks went to grade school in Hot Springs. So what do you recollect about the town about that time? let's start out first with Caballo. And come on, somebody just jump in about what you remember.
Well, I remember in Caballo, I started school, I don't know, the first year it was built after we moved out of from down below, the old Caballo. And I remember there used to be 8 grades there with 2 teachers. And people complain today about they've got 20 or 30 kids in one class. And back then, teachers had all them classes put up with and stuff, you know. And it's a whole lot different. And like they let school out now, if the air conditioner goes off, we didn't even have air conditioners then, you know. And it's a whole different ball game.
Had a wood heater. Did you
Yeah.
have a wood heater?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that building was part of a WPA, wasn't it? Part
Right.
of the WPA project that was built in about 1939, something like that, where it was built, and that was part of the whole work to put our whole economy back to work during the Depression. So they Roosevelt really worked hard on upgrading our schools and our sidewalks and our streets and of course the nation, and Caballo School was one of those. Any other memories of Caballo? Ed?
No, I don't.
Why, were you a reluctant learner, Ed?
He still is.
Pat and I were visiting last night about early days in '46, and that was during the war, and everybody was so patriotic. I mean, nothing like it is now.
Jane, the war ended in 45.
What
The war ended in 45.
yeah, it did. I was here.
You missed out on that.
I remember when they drove by and tooted their horns, the war was over.
Yeah.
But, you know, there was stamps that we had to have to get new shoes. Sugar was rationed.
Yes.
I know to get a pair of shop-made boots, you'd have to borrow stamps from different ones, and it was a sad time.
It was a happy time, though. We
Yeah,
really were.
but I mean, for the boys that were overseas.
Yeah, a
and
lot of them
fought.
are coming home then, and it was a good time. And some of them had money, which is really nice. We really enjoyed that.
So we have some daily experiences with the elementary school and Caballo before we move on to high school.
Well, yeah, I think it was a great time for all the people that attended school there. It was totally different than anything you see today. But I look back on it with fond memories of the kids. We knew it because some of those kids I went all the way through high school with. And then some of them I met later on in life, but it was very interesting. I can even remember the teacher, Miss Warner. I remember her real well.
Did she teach you all 6th grades?
No, Miss Sloan taught the my first grade, and then Miss Warner taught. And I don't remember when they they consolidated the schools. I think it was, what, Judy, you all remember, you was one of the last ones.
No, I think Charlotte said she was the last grade there, and Charlotte's younger than me. So.
It was in '57, somewhere in there when they started consolidating, because I know that we went to school up in Chloride, and then all of a sudden we had to start driving, riding on the buses all the way in. I mean, you'd come in on the freeze and go out on the freeze because of Red Hill, and they were paving about that time. So paving came in hand, went hand in hand with the consolidations in rural areas across the country. So yeah, this is probably the late 50s when they started closing up schools and then reorganizing that. So Daisy, any comments that you remember about?
Well, I went to school at Caballo when it was the old school down by the river, and there were 2 of us in first and second grade. There was another girl and myself. So, and Mrs. Chavez was teaching our room, and it was 2 rooms, and so she promoted us to the 3rd grade, so I made 2 grades in 1 year. I was really smart.
You lost it somewhere along the way.
Must have left it down there in the Bible.
Now, Jackie, did you go to high school or to grade school here?
High school.
High school.
Yeah, my last 2 years of high school. And I was very fortunate. I loved going to school here. And I love this town.
has some good memories. So,
Yes, very good memories.
And Kenneth, you were born in 27, you came, and so
Yeah.
did you go to, so did you go to grade school here in
Yes,
town
I
then?
did, yes.
What do you remember about that?
Well, of course, it was on North Street, the old schoolhouse, which is now the county offices. And I remember going to school with her husband, Ben Cain, Johnny Amon, some of the other boys that are still here.
And Lewis, was Lewis?
No,
older?
Lewis was older,
Okay.
much older. But the old school building's still in good shape. And of course, when we moved to high school, which is now the meal site and the convention center, that was an outstanding building too. And we had Salcedo Stadium, which is where the tennis courts are now. That was a football field. We didn't have much grass, had a lot of rocks.
Yeah.
And it was nice to go to school. Everybody enjoyed each other. Fond memories.
What were the size of the classes we're going through? Do you think that, I mean, do you remember more or less the size of the classes you were in?
Ours had 39 in it, and we four are all in the same class.
So that was Daisy and
Daisy,
you and Pat
and Jane.
Jane. We're all in 39 in that class.
Yeah.
What made it increase, so the boys were coming home and they went back to school because they were pulled out of school during the war. They were drafted out.
And so some came back and went back
And
to
made
high
our
school.
classes large.
And do you know to this
39
day,
is large.
and to this day with New Mexico, anybody can go back to school
Yeah.
regardless of their age to finish their high school diploma, you know, and I know that for some people that have a mindset that education should only be for 17, or if you're 19 years old, you shouldn't be in school, you can go back to school at any point to get your diploma because there's not an age restriction to that. And obviously during the time during the war that people took advantage of that, so.
Well, Kenneth, you came back
Yes.
service, yeah,
Yes.
so he came back and graduated with us.
Merchant Marines, right, Kenny?
Right.
Judy, what do you remember about 61? You remembered me in high school
Yes.
and with Pat's
Yeah, Sherry was in the 7th or 8th grade whenever I was a senior in high school. And one thing I can remember, I knew just about everybody in school. I could remember them, and it seems like kids nowadays don't even hardly know who's in their class. But back then, it seems like people knew each other better because there wasn't that many cars. We didn't do a lot of running around. We stayed mainly on the grounds.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
That's true. How was it change? How did it change from the 50s with you guys? With the three Hopkins boys there. What do you remember about that?
Good times.
What kind of trouble did you get into?
Well, I can tell one story about my two brothers when I was probably 5 or 6 years old. They trapped a pack rat in a hollow log out by the house. Well, I was probably maybe 4 or 5. I don't know how old I was, but I went outside and they got me and they said to stick my hand inside the hollow log. And when I did, I brought out a big rat right on the end of my finger. And I was screaming and hollering, and about that time, Mom come out. But I think Bill or Ed gave me a nickel to shut up. Mom had already heard me by that time. And these two boys took a pretty good thrashing over that.
Do you remember that? Ed? You remember that? Bill, what about you?
Yeah, I remember that.
They just don't tell about it.
Pranksters, right?
Yeah, we knew it was gonna bite or liable to bite. That's the reason we had Dale reach in there and get it.
What, you know, with talking about Salcedo Field down there, I mean, they had a Liberty Bell down there. I think they rang the bell. I can remember in middle school that my mother would not let me go to the games, but I can remember we always knew when somebody when the Hot Springs made a touchdown because they would ring this bell. And Do you remember, did you guys come up to the games at all, or?
Well, Bill was a cheerleader.
He still is.
Really?
Yeah, for one game.
I didn't know that.
We'll have a glass of lemonade.
Remember white pants?
And they all laughed and put me in, but I went to one game and I quit.
What's the story about that? Did he put a tutu on, or?
No, he had white pants. I remember the white pants, and I think it was a red shirt. I can't remember. I was 6 years behind Bill in school. See, I was still in Caballo grade school when Bill graduated. So I just barely remember him being a cheerleader.
But enough to let the cat out of the bag, right?
You'll never let him forget.
Okay, Bill, so what is your
Bill?
take on being a cheerleader?
Well, Harold Glasson nominated me, and I was always a popping off or something. I was popping off in there as usual. Harold, and then the class went to laughing, and they all voted me in. So I thought, well, I'd try it. I think I was at one game. I remember when Mark Tipton was right there on the front steps of the football game, you know, and he was really laughing, and I couldn't take it. I quit.
A short-lived cheerleader, right?
Yeah. I didn't even get in an annual.
I remember when we had a great band organization here, and we went to state. I wasn't here, but I could hear Ben tell these big stories. And he loved music, and he was very musical, and he couldn't read a note, but he kept first chair in his band.
Well, speaking of that, and what are your memories about when the colors changed from red, white, red, blue to the tiger colors?
It used to be orange and black originally.
Right.
I don't remember what year. You?
I wasn't here then, but it was because our uniforms were so tattered that another school gave us
That's right.
Oh,
those.
They gave us, because we didn't have any money. And I've heard the story.
They
And
came from Albuquerque.
They came from another school district that donated them to us, so that's we changed our colors because of that.
Yeah, it was
Had absolutely nothing to do with wanting to change our colors, just out of necessity.
I think that in the research that Paul Tooley has done, it was the all-state, and there was a winning team. You know, Hot Springs had an opportunity to go to a very what am I trying to say? It was an honor to go there, and the uniforms very prestigious, and the uniforms are pretty tattered, and so All-State gave the colors then to Hot Springs, so we changed from the orange and black, which was the tiger colors. I know all the years through high school I kept thinking, tigers aren't red and blue, but it's like you never get to the question to think, well, when did they change and why? And in fact, I think there's in the museum here, there is one of the uniforms from back in the 30s or the late 20s before the colors were changed.
and I'd like to say a few words about the football team too, by the way. I can't remember what year, but several of the merchants used to recruit players from Texas, basically. George Riddle, the druggist for one, Joe Barnes, some other business people. They would pay room and board for these boys, and they were big as college players, really. But boy, we had a good team.
And that's not allowed today.
No, right. And also,
You have to tell that.
Jane was talking about the band. I was a member of the band also. And we had 72 members, which is pretty big band for this little town. You look at the one they have now.
Yeah.
And we went to Santa Fe. We won the state, so we were certainly proud of that.
And what year was that?
Ooh, I don't remember what
Who was the
year.
band?
I'm bad about years.
Who was the band director, Kenneth?
Pardon
Who
me?
was the band director?
Smith, Mr. Smith.
Didn't know.
Pat, what are your recollections?
Well, it was my salvation coming here, really, because I was just not doing well in the Los Angeles school district. And so my father lived here, so I told him I just needed desperately to get someplace else, and so I came here and met people that became my very good friends, and we really had a very good time. My father threatened to send me home several times. My mother, because I was having such a good time. I wasn't supposed to have as much fun as I was. But the student, you know, and the faculty they were considerate people. We had some faculty people who were not as considerate as others, but overall, Mrs. Swartz was exceptionally nice, and her sister Mildred was. They were nice people, and they were nice to us. A few times one time we decided to take off for whatever reason, I have no idea. But we went to lunch, we decided we'd just not go back to school that day. So we were driving around in cars, and so my father was secretary of the Chamber of Commerce, so I thought, well, I'll get another car. So I went down to the secretary and said, Pat, they're looking for you, you better go back to school. So we all went back to school, and Hopper, what was Hopper's last name?
Piper.
Piper, yeah. Piper said to the principal, we come back.
My sister was so glad. Helped her reputation.
And we come back. So anyhow, I'd missed a art class, which I was horrible in. And so I had to do so many bases or whatever. I had to do all this artwork, which was really, and finally Miss Warren just said, forget it, Pat, because you can't do it. So I was accused for making all that up. But we did have a good time.
We did.
The Dudley family they had was it Willie's, this little car they had? And we used to take that and pile into that and drive over all the sand dunes, and it just was the best thing in my life that happened to me being here.
And you know, we had running boards on the cars, and you about 6 or 8 get in that car and stand up on the running board, and that was fun.
Yeah.
Kenny was usually our chauffeur.
Now, did you or Bill or did any of you guys, Ed, did any of you guys, were you playing hooky at any time like that?
Didn't believe in it.
You didn't?
I remember one time when I was in school, they had a football game. I guess this was right after a cheerleader or something. I don't know. But anyway, we all got a bottle of wine. There's me and Charles Hancock and I forget who else. There's several of us, and we was acting a lot more drunk than what we was. I remember Miss Giles called us and kicked us out. Tuffy Foley was a state policeman then. They kicked us out of the ball game and kicked us out of school. Well, I went home that night and I told the folks what had happened. I was out of school because I knew they was going to find out we was going to have a big meeting before we got back in. And the rest of them kids that got kicked out, they'd ride the bus on into town, then just go on downtown. They didn't tell their folks till the day of reckoning, you know. I remember that.
How'd you get back in school?
Well, we had that meeting and we had to promise to be pretty good boys from then on.
So that was all 3 of you, huh, that were
No.
involved in that?
Just me and them some other guys. I can't remember. I remember Harold Glasson was another one that nominated me for cheerleader. He was another.
You were getting even.
Yeah.
Did you get a whipping?
Huh?
Did you
No,
get a
I got a good talking to.
Well, you know, you've talked about George Riddles, who had Riddles Drug down on Main
Up on
Street.
Main,
Up
yeah.
on Main Street. And what do you recollect about the bars? Anybody remember where the New Zealand bar was?
Yes, it was right here.
Part of the museum,
Right,
that's right. Did you
right.
ever darken those doors?
Yes.
We tried.
You darkened them all.
Yeah. Been kicked out of all bars in town.
I used
Before
to
I
go-
was 21.
Before.
The next morning, it was really interesting being in a small town, having, you know, been in Los Angeles, but it was very strange because I'd go home and my father would say to me, well, I hear you did so-and-so last night. Now, how did he find that out? You know, it was amazing because he knew exactly. He'd pick me up for lunch, we'd go home for lunch, and he'd tell me, well, I was trying to get the so-and-so bar last night. I did? He said, well, yes, you did, don't you remember? And I said, yes, I remember. Okay, fine, don't do that again.
Now, Judy, were you a pretty straight shooter?
Well, I guess I was. No, but I never tried to get in any bars. So I don't have any stories like that.
I've been in every one in town. I took up for Judy.
Let's see, there was the Arizona, and there was the Arnold's down on
George's Bar.
George's Bar.
Yeah, Kilroy.
Kilroy's. Where was Kilroy's?
It was where Martha's Varieties,
Okay.
The Ritz Bar.
down the Ritz. It was where, what, the florist is?
Yeah. It
Oh, but
was,
don't forget, we had 3 dance halls too, and that was
Yeah, we
fantastic.
had Ash Balls and Silver
Silver Slipper.
Slipper and Lone Spot
Lone Spot.
And where was Lone Spot?
up north on where
Was
Randy
Moose
Ash
Lodge.
Balls.
Where Moose Lodge.
was, and then they tore it down and moved it across the street.
Oh, where Randy's fast stop is,
That's right.
right in there.
I think Hazel Potter Johnston talked about
Yeah.
that dance
Yeah.
hall in there. So that was
Yeah.
called
The Lone Spot.
the Lone Spot.
Spot.
And the Silver Slipper, which is still out there. I understand it's for sale now. They advertise this great bar that's in there. It's not that great a bar, but anyhow, they do. And of course, Ash Paws, which burned down.
Right.
And, but we just, the Dudley family, when the Ash Paws decided we couldn't go in there unless we went with a parent. My father didn't go to the bar, so I took care of that. But Mom and Emmett Dudley, we'd go as their kids. We just all go in the Dudley kids. We all went to the bar and we danced. All we did is dance. We didn't drink. We just danced. We had such a good time dancing.
She was wasting her time tomorrow, wasn't she?
Yeah, I should.
Yeah.
Well, I drank outside the bar.
Didn't want anybody to see you do it,
No,
right?
I couldn't get. It wouldn't serve me in the bar.
You know, Sherry, I'd like to say one thing about all the automobiles at the high school now. When I was in high school, we had one person had an old Model A, you know, with a rumble seat, and that was Carl Allen, by the way. But now you see new automobiles in the parking lot.
Right, everybody has a car.
Right.
Well, let's talk about the school strike.
Oh, you tell them about that. You were a ringleader.
I was just a troublemaker. But we were really labeled bad kids because I guess kids had never gone on strike against their school. We were upset because the school board didn't renew the contract of our principal, who was Dick Stewart. And so we decided we wouldn't go to school then if they weren't going to hire him back. And we'd go to school, but we'd stay across the street in the parking lot over there. We jammed all the locks of the building so that teachers couldn't get in. And I remember Bertha Swartz took a swing at one of us. But we buried the school spirit out under the superintendent's window.
Yeah, built a grave.
Had a grave with a headstone and all, and we stayed there a lot and prayed. Prayed we wouldn't get in trouble because we were taking our finals, our school finals then, and there were a lot of seniors who were due to graduate, and they needed their final. And of course, when this all became known to Santa Fe, they didn't know what to do with us. So they went ahead and passed all of us. But the next year we got a principal who was really mean. And he did not like me. And it didn't matter what kind of excuse I came to school with, I got an unexcused absence, even if I had a doctor's excuse. And that's the only time in my life I was paddled in school. I'd made it to my senior year, and he gave me a whipping. And you could hear it all over the school building.
Oh,
Yeah.
and who was that principal at that?
Kirby.
And how long did Mr. Kirby last?
Only 1 year. He left when we left.
He was happy to go.
Yeah, back then they used to paddle quite frequently. They used it on me several times, and they would take you in the boys' restroom and have you bend over and grab your ankles, and just paddle about that long with holes in it. Wow! And it would echo down the hall.
They sent a strong message, didn't they?
And it hurt.
Yeah.
It hurt.
So, too bad they can't paddle them now.
So this was in the 40s.
Oh, yeah.
This was in the 40s, and then you guys came along in the 50s. Now, did you get you didn't get paddled, did you?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Coach Phillips.
Of course.
He paddled, and he talked about it even for years after I graduated, about the time that he straightened me out. Yeah, I remember
Literally.
R.D. Jordan, he was a kid in my grade, and he was gonna get a paddling, so he stuck a magazine or something down inside his pants and everything, and talked about hearing it. When Coach hit him with that paddle, you could hear it all over the school, and he gave him 3 or 4 take that magazine out, R.B. Let's see how it works that way.
I bet that hurt then.
So I bet he did.
Yeah, I bet it did, yeah. And what about, Ed, what about you? Do you remember any experience? What kind of discipline was used at the schools at that time?
Ed was a little angel.
I paddle at that time, and a belt in grade school.
Oh, really?
Belt.
That hurt.
And the ruler over your hands.
Yeah, that's cruel and unusual punishment today. They probably wouldn't allow that.
Sure got your attention though.
Yeah, it does. Yes, it did. So we've talked about some of the bars and then the the protest of school where you didn't want to lose a principal.
That we loved.
Yeah. And then Mr. Stewart, did he end up going into the
Real estate.
the real
Yeah.
estate business?
Insurance, excuse me, insurance.
Wall Stewart.
Well, so he didn't leave the area then.
No,
No.
no.
No, he didn't.
Everybody really liked him. He was
Yeah.
well liked.
Yes, very liked, very well liked.
And today, people just move on. You know, they don't stick around. They just go on and find a job somewhere else. And I think our communities lose that connectivity, don't you
Yes.
think?
Yes.
Many schools lose their continuity too. They really do when they have changeover of staff all the time. It's difficult to maintain, I think.
Do any of you remember any stories, like ghost stories, or like La Llorona, or any of the different stories living down around Caballo Lake, hunting snipe? I mean, did you guys do anything ornery like that? Leave people out in the muck somewhere?
No, I never
Surely
did.
you had snipe hunts.
No, I never did. I'd heard about them, but we never went on one.
You haven't lived.
There's still time.
I tell you, down at Caballo, like I said, here some of these people in town, they must have had more money than we did, because we didn't go nowhere down there. And
You
like
just worked.
my dad told me, he said that, and a bunch of them talked about they didn't even know when the Depression come along, because they didn't have any money then, didn't have any money after. He said nobody had nothing then. I'm gonna tell you, it was tough out there.
Well, I wish Bill would talk about the time when Mom started the post office there at Caballo, because she had the post office there from before I was born, and all those years. And I remember when I was just a little kid that people would still come to the post office with wagons and horses. And I know Bill remembers this a lot better than I do.
Oh yeah, I remember when Mama first started out, I think it was 1934 or something, and they based her pay on cancellation, stamp sales and stuff like that. And her pay then was about $15 a month. It's about what, sometimes $12 to $15 a month. And I imagine that's why the post office is in trouble now, is because I know Shirley, she was a postmaster, and I think she was at that time making close to $40,000 a year, for the same job.
Things have changed, haven't
Oh,
they?
I tell you, it has.
And I think we do have the, Jay, can you pass me that post office document up there, please? It's underneath that, yeah. Because I think that, thank you, we were looking at some post office history in Array, and we were in here, let me find that real quick. That would have been, this would have been the post office in Caballo, right?
Right.
1960, let's see, page 16. Yeah, Bill Hopkins, 1969. We have a picture here of Bill holding a cup of coffee in front of the Caballo. So that's an interesting picture.
The post office was right in our home.
Yeah.
And so we always had, there was people there drinking coffee all the time. and
Look how
lots
he
of
dressed
them.
up, he even had a tie on.
Oh,
Are you sure that's
whoa.
Bill?
You want to see see that and pass it around.
And Sherry, we had the only
Yeah, he's
phone
pressed up.
in Caballo
Wonder where
at that
it's
time,
going.
one of those old wall hand cranky
Oh,
phones.
yeah.
And so everyone came to use the phone there to,
Everybody.
Yeah, we had the only phone in the.
Party line.
Yeah, party line.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
no,
there
that was
no
before
one, no party line then. Then we had the only phone.
Yeah,
You had to ring and get the
Yeah.
operator, and then I remember during the war, a lot of the Holden boys and stuff used to come up there and call some of their folks overseas and stuff, or wherever they stationed at, and they'd wait around for hours for the to call back because it wasn't very good service back then.
Bill, wasn't our phone 4 rings?
I think so.
I
And somebody was a
4
short
rings
and a
and
long.
we'd answer. And, you know, that
There was a short and a long, or maybe Plomas answered or something.
and so Velma Hopkins was your mother.
Right.
It says here that Velma Hopkins was placed in the post office as acting postmaster on October 22nd, 1935. Velma was in the post office for only 4 months when she was appointed to the position February 29th, leap year, 1936. It must have been a happy leap year for Velma. She obviously enjoyed serving the community because she remained in the post office for 47 years. And then they go on to talk about when the Caballo Reservoir was completed in 1938. Goes on to talk about the Caballo becoming a resort area for water sports and fishing, but the lake covered many of the homes of early settlers. Most of these families moved to the foothills of the west of the Rio Grande and continued their ranching. Is that what your family did then?
And Daisy can remember a lot about Old Caballo because her folks had a big store there, and they wagons used to come and load up grocery stuff at the Faulkner store before they moved to town.
Yeah. We had everything in that store, from groceries, candy, horseshoes, horseshoe nails, bread. It was a big store.
Now, exactly where was that store located? I mean, it was down closer to the river, obviously. And was it on Seco or?
Well, it was
Animas.
between Seco,
It was on Animas Street.
yeah, closer to Animas.
Where it really is right in the mouth. Come down one of these days and I'll show you the old foundations and stuff of the schoolhouse and the dirt store
And
Which-
now that the lake is so low, it's a perfect
can see
time.
it, right.
It's a perfect time.
oh yeah.
Perfect
Leo
time.
was wanting to go down one of these days and look at the foundations and stuff.
Yeah, we'd like to do that and do some videoing, filming of that area. Now, what happened at the time when the house was inadvertently built, not on homestead land, but on state or federal land?
Well, I remember Mama telling us about they bought this from Manny Benson. They was the postmaster before that.
Right.
And then we was there, and then they put the dam in. Everybody was having to move out. Well, they found out then that our house and stuff was on state land, and so was the Gordons on state land. I don't know, was y'all's too? I don't know where the line went. It was close in there. But anyway, they wasn't going to give us anything for the improvements, but there really wasn't that much improvement for the houses was bad back then. But anyway, they got a lawyer and they got paid for the improvements on it.
Does anyone remember what those improvements were when they condemned the land? Anybody remember that, when your land was condemned? Did they swap you across the board for land? Or
No,
did
they
you-
bought some land up above the highway then, and I don't know, that's all they got paid was for the improvements, because like they didn't have to condemn that land on account of it was state land already.
do you-
Anymore today, boy, if you used to do something like that, it'd catch you in a minute.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Times have changed.
Oh, yeah.
Now, when people moved out and then they relocated, that happened, all you boys were home then, weren't you, when that?
Yeah.
Well, that happened way before I was born. You know,
Yeah.
I was born in '39.
Uh-huh.
So I know our grandfather, Cox, they had a place there too. Didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was some Coxes, which my mother was a Cox. And they had some places there on that was above the Saco Creek. But they moved them all out. Some of them went to Plomas and some of them went to Animas.
So is that the Barry Cox then that went up Palomas?
Right, that was our granddad.
That was your granddad,
Right.
okay, because I noticed that when Jay and I were walking around the old cemetery at at Palomas that we saw the Barry Cox there, 1870 something to die about
1945, I think.
Yeah,
something like that.
1945, you're right, that's right. So that would have been
Our granddad.
your granddad. So. Well, how did you get the land in San Miguel then? I mean, was that something that was traded out, or did you buy later on
My
that?
daddy bought that just before he got killed, and he'd only had it about a year or two when he bought that. I think he bought it from the bank. The bank had repossessed it from a guy by the name of Rollins, and then Dad bought it from the bank.
From Rollins, so
Uh-huh.
San Miguel.
Mhm.
So sometime we can go up and you can show us where the San Miguel Cemetery is.
Right, all right.
Jay and I were up there looking. We found the church, which interesting, the San Miguel Church is built like a coffin.
Yeah.
And that was built by Pete Padilla's ancestors, but they were talking about during the influenza of 1917, 1918, that's how the church was built. But we could not find the cemetery the day we went.
It's down below there.
So when it's your old
Yeah.
place?
Oh.
And there's not a tombstone in it, they're all just rocks with initials and dates carved in it, you know.
So that's an interesting time there, how your family's just moved on up the canyons then. And you raise cattle?
We've always been in the cattle business, some way or another. We've always been that way.
And so what was your favorite horse? How did you?
When we had one, we all shared him, Shorty.
All at the same time?
Well, no, we had different times. Well, back in those days, when Bill graduated from high school, he went to work for the Ladder Ranch and different ranches around. Then Ed moved up, and it's just kind of like a stair-step deal. That's the kind of way you went. Except Judy missed all this. See?
I think you did.
Did you ride, Judy?
No, not much. Once in a while I dried some, but not much.
You're busy cooking for these out.
Now, Pat, you talk about when you had a horse and you had a pony,
Oh, I had a horse, yeah.
Yeah.
Belonged to Buck Greer.
and tell us about.
Buck Greer said that if you can get to Monticello, you can have that horse. Well, I thought, well, that's fine. So my father drove me out there and I was going to ride this horse back. Well, I'll tell you what, I was not a good rider at all. And I got off that horse so many times and got back on. I hated that horse by the time I got to town. And so, but anyhow, Buck let me have that horse until I graduated.
And where'd you keep him?
We lived, my father, you know, he tended to move around a lot. He'd fix a place up and he'd sell it. So he had this place that was right on Main Street, on the highway. You know, it's a brick building. You know where the laundromat is?
Third.
Yeah.
South Broadway.
On South Broadway?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
And that house was about 3 doors from that. And it's still there. It's on the left-hand side. So we went from there to Williams Addition. He traded that house one day. I came home. He said, well, we're moving. And I said, okay, fine. And his wife was really unhappy with it. But anyhow, we moved to a little tiny house where actually I didn't have a bedroom. It was very convenient. In the summertime, I could sleep in the back porch. Wintertime, I slept on the couch. But I had a horse there, and that's where I had a fixed little pen back there, and I had a horse. But Mary Coburn, Knox Bowles, she and I used to ride a lot, and she'd ride out there and meet me, and we'd ride all over the horses. I love that horse. His name was Chief.
Chief.
Yes, I'll never forget him.
So you rode down probably toward the river?
Yeah, right down there a lot. And then, of course, Mrs. Knox built a place down the river. And my father had some property there too, but my father didn't do things as he should be, because he had a relationship with Mrs. Knox that they would have a covenants there and they'd take care of it. Well, my father just sold the property to anybody. You know, somebody from Arkansas came in and put up a tent, and he sold the property to him. So Mrs. Knox did not care for my father at all. I wonder why. Because she had a beautiful home down there. I don't know who lives down there now. Do you?
Butch Bullock.
Oh, Butch Bullock lives down there? Okay.
So that's
Yeah,
down there by the
yeah,
river.
Yeah, but we used to ride down there on the river, along the river all the time. And of course, when the fair came and the rodeos and so forth, we had a great time with those. It was a lot of fun.
Now, speaking of the fair, does anyone remember when the fairgrounds was where the Lee Bell Johnson or the Civic Center is on Folk Street?
Yes,
You
I
remember?
remember that.
Tell us about showing cattle right in the middle of town, and where did they keep them then? I mean, with their livestock.
Temporary, temporary different things. But
One
there were-
time-
Jay Cox brought in bulls, and some of us brought horses, and
And
that
about
was in 49.
49, because we were looking for some pictures to hang on the wall down at the Civic Center. I mean, down at the Senior Rec Center. And, you know, we had talked to Trudy, and Trudy says, yeah, remember the Cox is showing down there, but we went through all the old school albums. We looked everywhere for trying to find a picture of what that area must have looked like.
It's just temporary
Just
stuff.
temporary.
I remember one
Altogether.
year, the fair, the animals and everything were in the football field.
Oh, Salcedo Stadium?
Yeah, that's where, and I don't know where they had the rest of the stuff. I can't remember. It must have been around the high school there somewhere.
Yeah, I remember that day that the farmers showed their stuff in the gym up there.
Yeah,
That one year.
that's right,
In the
in the
gym, they
gym.
had their
At the high
corn,
school.
whatever they'd raised, canned goods and stuff.
Now, about what year was that?
Gosh, I don't know. I was pretty small, but I remember it.
So it had to be in the early 40s then.
Well, it'd been the late 40s, or I wouldn't have remembered it. Maybe during the war, probably.
Okay, maybe,
Maybe
okay.
that.
Well, this is really a critical piece of history because, you know, we were trying to sort out some of it and trying to, you know, confirm with, you know, and didn't think about asking you guys. So now we know where to go for the source when we have a question and go, well, I wonder who would remember that.
Well, I remember the folks, the reason I kind of remember folks was talking about how many ribbons the Bensons won on their can stuff. Odell Benson and his wife, they brought all kinds. They really, and they had ribbons that you wouldn't believe.
They lived up Palomas, right?
Right.
So they must have had a large garden up there.
Yeah, and they had a ranch too, and garden.
Did your families garden at all? I mean, do you remember having a garden or?
No, my father had a cow. He had a cow, and he milked. And when he'd go, because with the secretary of the Chamber of Commerce, he had to travel a lot, so he was trying to teach me how to milk that cow. I never learned how. I was so smart about that. I just tried and tried, so he'd have to hire somebody to come and milk the cow.
And you kept a cow in town?
Yeah, oh, well, he lived, yeah, that little place on the highway, the brick house, he had a cow. And I knew so little about livestock at that time. I don't know a lot now, but anyhow, he was talking about he was going to breed this cow, and he said he hoped he had a heifer. And I said, if you want a heifer, why don't you breed it with a heifer?
Sweet girl from Los Angeles.
So knowledgeable about the whole thing.
Well, everybody had a milk cow then
Yeah.
in town. Ben folks had chickens and a milk cow on 608, right?
Well, I can.
Amons lived right across the street from us, and Ben and Johnny were the only ones around there. And that was in 48 that happened, but everybody had a milk cow.
Did the Amons have a milk cow? Did it?
And Ada Martin, I don't remember what Ada's maiden name was, who married Guy Martin, but Ada, I can remember talking to her at one time, and she talked about having milk cow and chicken just somewhere right down there close to Austin Street, so
Yeah.
that must have been a very common, which is, I mean,
Right.
we ought to go
Raised
back to that.
chickens and,
We ought to go back to that.
You
may
got
well be
chickens?
on our way.
With the economy the way it is, we probably should all get a few chickens anyhow.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
You have chickens?
I have chickens and I have geese. Yeah. I have great watchdogs. I came in last night really late, and boy, they were sounding off like. And I said, "It's just me, baby," because I lock them up every night because we get fox and we've had all kinds of critters, you know, that come across the river when the water's off. So, you know, it's
You need some guinea hens.
oh, they would really make a lot of noise. I tell you, they'd sound off. So. Well, any other memories that about the town, about the school?
how about Ralph Edwards changing the name of the town, and it did help the town get a foothold in life. We were all starving to death. So that was quite an event that happened.
And about the time that,
50.
in 1950, about the time they were making this big splash at the Civic Center, I think the state police were raiding illegal gambling all over town and and closing up one-armed bandits and
They dumped them all.
yeah.
So I got one of them.
That's right, you do.
Yeah,
Did you get one of the ones?
It's a penny machine. It was out at the lodge, out at the lake. Dam site, they call it now. And we had a nickel machine and was it dime or quarter? We had 3 slot machines, but a friend, actually he was married to Kenny's cousin, took it to Las Vegas, took the machines, and he was going to get them all repaired. But we got one back, the penny machine. That's it. And I still have it. And the state police at the time knew I had it. I guess it's still okay.
I think that they're antique at this time. It's
Yeah.
about 1930, probably 1937, 38, something like that. I mean, when they were building those one-armed bandits. Did you guys ever participate in the one-armed bandits or the?
oh yes, when we had when the lodge was in business, Paul Woodford, I guess, owned it then. And they had everything from a penny to a silver dollar. And also in all these bars in town, they also had it up front. And then in the back room, they'd have a gambling room, roulette and poker, crap table, a whole smear.
What was the name of that bar? We even had slot machines in Caballo then. In a bar.
Really?
What was the name of that bar?
I don't know, then the Mexican people owned it, I would get with the name.
It burnt down.
It burned
remember?
down.
It burned down and we helped them pick out, there was some money.
Yeah, the coins is all melted
Yeah.
together. It got
Really?
yeah, and I don't know where they're at now. You must have got off with it.
I spit
You spit it.
it. No, I can't remember the name of the bar, but it was a bar about half a mile from the house.
When they closed down gambling, we didn't think TRC would ever survive, because that was, people would come from all over and gamble here. And it really helped the business a lot.
It was a
Everybody
thriving
feels sad.
community. It was a thriving community, I know, when
Right.
I first came here to visit in '44. I visited my father then, and it was a very lively community. I think you had little Houseville reputes, and you had quite a few things going on here that was quite interesting.
And the bars slowly closed, became 2 and 3 instead of 8 and 10, because you couldn't gamble
Yeah.
anymore.
Well, then they sold the license
Yeah.
to move them out of town.
The liquor license.
People in like Albuquerque, the big cities were building motels and they had to have a liquor license, so that's why the prices are still way up there.
That's right, that's right. Well, what, in thinking back, what stories do you remember about the turn of the century? I mean, I think you talked about there was some, your parents had like a mill, or they were doing lumber work up, is it Seco you said?
Well, that was my dad's dad that
Yeah.
had that. And him and Tom used to haul that lumber down on a wagon from up on the Seco. Took them 2 days to get to town. And that would have been in about the 1920s, 21 or something like that. And they'd go back, they could make it back in 1 day, but they'd have to double team the wagons to get up out of the Seco Creek up on there. And then fall down into Plumas and come down the creek all the way. But in 1921 or 22, my dad was working over there at the mines over there in
Santa Rita.
Santa Rita, and he got his legs cut off. And he was 18 years old, and a lot of people never even knew that he had wooden legs. He'd walk on them. He could do anything in the world. He was something else.
And
I never appreciated him much till I got grown and tried to do the things that he used to do. And that's when you know what it's all about.
yeah.
He drove the school bus for how many years?
Yeah. He wouldn't even be allowed to drive a school bus today, the way they got the restrictions with them artificial legs and
Yeah.
stuff. Never had an accident in all them years.
Wow. So they came over the mountain from the Santa Ritas, and that had to have been in the 20s.
Well, no, they worked the sawmill first. That's after he, I guess, got big enough to run away from home, probably. Left there and went over there to
Oh, I see.
Santa Rita.
Uh-huh. And then came back later and.
Yeah, I come back and, I don't know, he married my mom in 1932, I guess.
I can remember his dad, we didn't know he had artificial limbs. We just thought he walked kind of funny, but we never dreamed that he didn't have, because he wore boots and, you know, we never knew didn't have his legs.
I still got a pair of his old legs there at the basement of the house, and they're a whole lot different than they are today.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Andy.
I'll say.
So when they, how were they falling the lumber? They were obviously using axes. I mean, that must have been when they had the lumber mill.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. They had them cross saws, I guess, and stuff up there because, like I say, that was before I was even born when they had that sawmill up on the Saco.
Have they never talked about? You don't ever remember any of the stories coming?
Well, I knew that it was cross saws and axes and skidding them with it. It was all did with team and horse back in. There wasn't nothing. And someone said the old boiler from the sawmill still up there on the Saco somewhere. I don't know.
That's interesting. And then when they brought it down, when they brought the wood down, then was there a sawmill closer to this area?
No, it was already sawed up when they brought it down.
Okay.
Probably some of these older buildings was built with some of the lumber they hauled in.
And see, I think that that's probably where much of the lumber came from to build some of the carport, the little carport structures here in Hot Springs. You know, we hear this story all the time. Well, the lumber came in from when they dismantled the cottages around Elephant Butte when they finished the dam in 1916. You know, I just think that that's probably just wishful thinking on some owners' parts. But as we all know, if you don't have you know, any type of documentation on your property to be able to track what it was, then, you know, it's highly unlikely that with an abstract, it's highly unlikely that that wood built all these buildings or all these little carports that are you know, that still survive around Hot Springs. Much of that wood very well could have been come in.
It did, and probably with that sawmill you was talking about Hermosa too. That is a Hopkins.
The other half, yeah. Well, and you know, I think that one of the things that becomes very evident here is because so many of our little unincorporated communities, their homes or their structures were built with adobe. But when people moved in here and the water table was so close to the, you know, to the surface, they obviously had to build with other kinds of material rather than adobe, because the adobe just couldn't withstand the moisture. And that would have made a place for an opportunity for people to be able to sell their wood and move it in. Any other early memories of what you've heard or what you might have thought about? Talk about the Vera Hotel and when the regulators came into town and they would be out there with they have the one phone was in like the Hopkins, you had the one phone in the Vera Hotel.
Now, of course, I wasn't here then, so I just have to go by stories that were in the newspaper that other people told about, but they claimed that my uncle did answer the phone, or that he'd get on, what do you call it?
Megaphone.
Yeah, a megaphone up on the top porch of the Vera and call the revenuer by name so everybody would know that the revenuer was here and fix the bars up, straighten things up, clean up, get the gambling tables all cleared off, so they would know that the revenuers were in town. And they claim that went on for years. And we did have the only phone, that one of those tall things, you know, and you cranked it, and so many rings for somebody. And the telephone building, first one was over here, wasn't it? About where Lucchini's building.
Yeah, Main Street.
Then later on, what did they call, during the war, what did they call the office that regulated whether you could have tires for your car or
You had to, there are just so many.
I don't know.
gasoline.
Yeah.
Rationing, the
Right.
ration.
Yeah, the ration
There-
board.
there was
yeah.
a ration
Yeah.
board.
Allie Heffernan was on that.
Yeah.
He was a good friend. His daughter was our best friend. And that was in that building later where the telephone company had been. And one of the people who was one of the telephone operators, we were talking to her the other day, and she had gone to school with us. She married a Morton Daniels, beautiful blonde hair, I remember.
She was very nice.
Yeah, yes, and she still is. She's still here.
But didn't your Aunt Florence own that telephone building at one
Oh,
time?
the one down
Yeah,
on
right,
McAdoo.
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
she owned
Right.
that, and she built an apartment, a two-story apartment there, and the telephone office was downstairs, and the apartment was upstairs. And Western Union was also in there with the telephone company for many years, and that building is still there. It's part of what is now the telephone company, at the back. You can see it back there. She had a shop there on that corner called Enchanted Corner.
Florence Knox was really an interesting woman because
Businesswoman.
but she cared a lot about us as kids, and she was always trying to get things going. And now at the community center, which is out at that time had these city offices in it, and the police department was in there, and my father's chamber of commerce was in that building.
Yeah.
And she was always getting dances set up for us and so forth and so on, trying to get us to behave
really
ourselves.
was.
She tried to get us to behave ourselves, pay attention.
Didn't work.
But she was a very, very nice woman. I remember her. She was extremely nice. She worked hard to get things and make this community work. She was certainly one of the first people at the Hot Springs Women's Club.
Yeah.
She was one of the first people who started that.
And she started the Girl Scouts here.
And the library.
The brownies.
Yeah.
She started the library, down on Broadway.
McAdoo.
Well, there
Oh,
was
there was one earlier.
Yeah, right down on Broadway. She had, I did the research, when I was involved with the Historic Preservation Project.
Oh.
And she had started a library there, but she really was important. And then she had the bookmobile came up to the hotel, and she was a extremely intelligent woman who knew the need for children and knew the need for a community to build upon a community, and she did an exceptionally good job. She was a nice person.
It was always wonderful to see those community-minded people that step up and start building the infrastructures in a community. So, did you have anything like that out in Caballo, or did you boys just work? Yeah, I mean that. When we talked with Dogie Chavez, that's what she said. She said, she was just on the back of a horse all the time with the Gordons, and she said,
Well, they were.
we worked. She said, she said, we talked about Palomas Gap and going up Palomas Gap Road. She said, I always wanted to go up there, but my dad said, we got to round up cattle and we got to work. So
They did work hard. They
Yeah.
worked hard. I think the children that lived down in the river and down that area, they had a hard life. They worked hard. It was, I think.
Yeah, the Gordons, they didn't get a vehicle till about during the war. It was a pickup. I remember that. They got the first pickup. Then otherwise it was in a wagon all that. Like I say, down at Caballo, it's a little bit tough down there. No electricity back there. Didn't get electricity till after the war. And everybody either, we had a windmill, we was lucky, didn't have
Wind
poles.
charger.
Up the Hanover Street, they pulled it up out of the well with a bucket and stuff. They had a pretty hard life. If we got electricity, that sure helped the bunch.
Well, they talked about that in Array when we interviewed a number of which would probably have been in the, you know, the class of like 57. Many of the gentlemen and ladies that had come down there, that had come back for the interview, very similar to this, talked about the electricity coming into the Array area after, you know, after the war. And, you know, when they were just, again, it was part of the New Deal and it was part of that whole infrastructure, but it took on more momentum after, you know, after the New Deal and after World War II. Then there started being more services, you know, available out in the rural areas.
Yeah.
Well, when did they start dairy? Found the blacks and all of them that had the larger dairy.
You know, I
farms
don't
and-
know, that was started before I knew anything about it. I don't know what year it started.
It was in the 20s.
In the 20s.
Yeah, and they've talked about, many of the individuals talked about how grateful that their fathers had been or their grandfathers had been because Mr. Black, Mr. Price and Mr. Black had like a pheasant. They had like a shooting gallery down there, and they would raise pheasants and different kinds of critters that, you know, they could shoot then. I mean, birds, fowl, like ducks and pheasants, and they would have their game down there so they could shoot, and then some of the gentlemen's fathers would help take care of that. So they come up from El Paso then, but
Now, Kenneth Black went to school with us, he graduated with us. He always had to go to work. You know, they rode the bus. They didn't have the opportunity we had as kids in town.
They didn't get in trouble.
No, they didn't. They didn't get in trouble like we did.
They were like the Hopkins. They all had to work when they got home from school.
Yeah.
But Bill got in trouble anyhow.
Yeah.
and Daisy talked about that too, going home and having to work and
Oh, boy.
Yeah, we were poor, because we came from Caballo and we never got any richer, I don't think.
It didn't help. The move didn't help me.
didn't help. Well, anything else? You know, we really have appreciated this interview today. This has been wonderful to talk about the rural areas and early memories of Hot Springs, and we really thank you on behalf of the community and because of Campo Espinoso. For those of you, you can video stream. If you have a computer, you can video stream all these interviews right off of our website. And I'll give you a card before you leave to show how you can go online and watch that, and watch Daisy's interview and Sonny Hale's interview and the Jack Martin Well interview and many of the other fine pieces of art that Jay's put together. So we thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.